Well, I'm no Doshington, but I can give this condensed run video thing a try. And what better time than Space Age? To make things more interesting, I'm not going to check the preview or re-roll my seed. Whatever I get is what I'll play through. Keep an eye on that playthrough timer. It is my gift to you. I do not play this game fast. Prostegma, hetimus, metales, crowing jouet. The burner phase is what it is, as boring to watch as it is to play. Not as bad as the burner phase in space exploration, though. At least AAI Industry lets burner inserters leach coal from furnaces for an early furnace stack. Can't do that here. No, you've got to make about 100 inserters before you can really automate plate production. Which means automating circuits before having a decent furnace. You might have noticed that my starting ore patches are eating each other. This happens sometimes. Ore patch generation can get overridden by water and other ore patches. As a result, my starting coal patch is embarrassing. And I'll have to sort the output of my miners because the patches are too small to mine without mixing production. The radius of an ore patch is almost more important than its quantity. It doesn't much matter if an ore patch has 1,000,000 ore in it if you can only fit a single miner on it. And this coal patch simply will not allow for the kind of throughput I need. It's not all bad though. There's a surfeit of iron patches up to the north of the pond here. Also, there's a pretty good oil well and a gigantic uranium mine. It's just enough of a consolation to get me to keep going. There's biters camping on the goods though, and it's better to take them out early before the expansion timer kicks in. And this is just about the largest map start biter nest I've ever seen. Just look at this, it's ridiculous. I don't even have red ammo yet. I get tripped up a few times because I hotkeyed ammo so I could more quickly shove it in the turrets. But since ammo is automatically fed into your ammo pouch, you can't actually hotkey it unless you have an overflow. The Fill For Me mod lets you place down turrets that already contain ammo from your inventory, but that's a little cheaty, so I turned it off before starting. If you're interested in what mods I am using, they're in the description, mainly just Pushbutton, text plate, clean floors, and vehicle snapping. With that out of the way, I get to work planning the first furnace stack, and placing the first electric miners. If your ore patches are mixed like this, you're pretty much going to need to use filtered splitters. You just have to make sure that neither product gets backed up or it will prevent the other one from going through. With a solid belt of iron and half a belt of copper, you can shove the basic necessities out. Belts, pipes, inserters, and the first 2 sciences. This will last a while and lets you focus on other things. Next we need steel production, and this is where I trip up by branching the steel in the opposite direction of the main bus, because I've already forgotten to leave space for it, and I don't have undergrounds automated yet. It's fine, though. All I want is some piercing ammo to clear out the neighborhood. My stone patch is really small and really far away, but it'll do for the next 20 hours. You barely need any stone bricks for anything. My pathetic coal patch is getting to be too slow for production, so I automate steel furnaces, which will cut the coal consumption of my plate production in half. I also go and tap the oil well and immediately set it up to start pumping out solid fuel for the smelters. Solid fuel from petroleum isn't the most efficient energy source, but it's functionally infinite, which my coal is most decidedly not. And this will finally pump up the amount of throughput I can get to my boilers. Upgrading to steel furnaces is easy since they have the same footprint, but if you don't also upgrade to red belts at the same time, you'll get rate limited. And you need that increased production to pay for the red belts, and also you need more iron to feed the faster furnaces. This base is already starting to piss me off a little. I can't believe I fell into the trap of splitting my production lines. And unfortunately, that's not going to be fixed for some time. Once you have a functional design, you always feel compelled to add just one more thing to it to eke out some more production before tearing it down to start over. In the mid-game, I usually start to take the base global on a modular rail network, but that means automating rails, engines, signals, and combinators real quick. To make things interesting, I won't be using any external blueprints. I've never actually built my own rail network blueprint book before, but what could possibly go wrong? Oh, that. I put the stations backwards. I handcraft just enough military science to unlock flamethrowers. They make automated outpost defense a breeze. I also need to automate big electric poles for railway electrical lines. I don't know what possesses me to rush rail networks by hand before having construction bots, but quite frankly, I can't stand to look at that starter base anymore and want to retreat to the safety of a nice, clean outpost. There, crude oil on rails. It pays to make your first outpost an oil well because you can feed the flamethrowers with the crude oil from on-site and then send the train to set up every subsequent outpost. Time for petrochemicals. A better player than I would have launched a rocket by now. Chemical science is the gatekeeper for all the fun stuff. Bots, tanks, laser turrets, space rockets. Does mean having to make red chips though. The core lesson the chemical science hammers home is that sometimes things can take a really long time to craft. And you can get bottlenecked by crafting time rather than ingredient shortage. This amount of red chip assemblers isn't nearly enough, but I'm only interested in slowly chipping away at the blue potions while escaping to my mind palace to dream of a more orderly factory. Might as well automate some military science. Advanced oil processing is basically free once you have it, so long as you know how to set up an overflow valve. Just be careful using solid fuel as a transitional energy source because you might just end up clogging up your plastic and grenade machines with it rather than coal. Solar power is basically a trap. The panels take up a lot of space and the accumulators take a lot of petrochemicals. Faster and easier to just retrofit solid fuel into your boilers and tell nuclear power. While that works, I set up the fence. Being hemmed in on all sides makes me build a lot more compact than I really should, but I just never feel safe making anything worthwhile without a proper defensive integument. There's two things that you can do with a starter base. Use it as a launching pad to make a second larger base with better planning, or tear it down and start fresh. I'd normally do the former, but I've realized that cliff explosives require science from Volcanus, so a transcontinental rail network isn't in my immediate future. I want this base to make two more things for a minute before I tear it down. I need bots and electric furnaces. Quality construction bots have a longer range. I want to fish for at least a few for my personal roboport. These things aren't being limited by crafting time anyway. Side note, this setup became immediately jammed when the first quality intermediates were generated because I didn't know how quality worked yet. In retrospect, it's not really worth bothering with quality recipes until you've been to Fulgora. I extend my walls over a fresh coal patch and use it to improve my electrical grid, which has been getting a bit strained. I'd like to move away from literally anything relying on this cursed starter patch, so I make another outpost to capture this copper patch down here. From here on, most of my copper will come in on 1 to 4 trains. I used to use 1 to 3 trains because I thought that was the most weight that you should put on a single locomotive, and have since been thoroughly chastised. I make a temporary second furnace stack specifically to make steel for the left side of my base and automate some basic supplies, but this place doesn't have long to live. The good thing about deciding that your base is about to get torn down is that you can truly give up on actually making it well.
Spaghetti time.
Non-explosive cannon shells got a massive buff in 2.0, and I set up a little automatic ammo loading garage for my shiny new tank. Don't sleep on defender capsules. They may seem expensive, but when you factor in the cost of the ammo that normal turrets chew through, it's actually shockingly economical because defender capsules have infinite ammo for the duration of their lifespan. Processing units in LDS take an absurd amount of copper compared to practically everything else combined, so I need another copper patch. Unfortunately, this is the biggest one that I could find, and it's frightfully far away. I hate doing this non-grid rail network, but with cliff explosives locked behind space, it's the best I can do. Did you know that humans invented space rockets before TNT and artillery? It's not like space rockets are and always have been a knock-on technology of artillery and ballistics. That's crazy. Someone should write a book about a bunch of artillery experts making a space cannon or something. Just don't use the second half of the book to write your self-insert as the coolest, bravest, sexiest man alive who wins an argument with a scientist that there's a breathable atmosphere on the moon, despite being basically illiterate. I feel like that book doesn't get enough flack for that. Anyway, I'll stop moaning about the AO3 works of a man who died almost a century before I was born to explain that logistics networks are also locked behind space science. Makes sense here, though. Amazon is still trying to figure that one out. I'm a long way from proper nuclear power, but I get excited enough to start some basic uranium refining and designing my new reactor from scratch with ghosts. If you hear this sound, it means a piece of U-235 was just processed. I set it up as a global alert so I'd know when it stopped running in the background, which turns out to be most of the time, so I'm glad that I did. Alright, enough screwing around. Let's clean up this mess. Clear out the sciences first, and the labs. Smelting arrays. Man, I really should have made more construction bots before I did this. Ah well, if I gather stuff by hand, the logistics bots will pull it out of my inventory so long as I set trash unrequested, so it'll go about twice as fast. I designed the new furnace stack specifically so that when I have nuclear power up and running, I can force build electric furnaces over top of the steel furnaces. I want 2 belts of iron and 1 belt of steel, which means 4 stacks. This copper stack will be fed by a train, and there's room to add another one later. Now it's time to get bussin'. Okay, I've made a huge mistake. I fed the crude oil from my old petrochemical build into the new one using the flamethrower turret's oil line, completely forgetting that it needed priority access to oil to generate the base's main power. Thankfully, I've been making rocket fuel in the background so I can shove that in the boilers until it sputters back to life. But this is the main problem with using oil power instead of solar in the mid-game. The main bus was beautiful while it lasted, but I ran out of space and started reverting back to the spaghetti brain. Also, the processing units drink all the copper plates, so I build the second copper array and lazily slap it in the bus midstream. It's fine. It can really only produce a trickle of production in the utility science, but it makes all the sundries I need to slap down a base elsewhere. And it can technically make space rockets. Eventually. I need to make the rocket silo first. It'll be a lot stronger once I can start slapping productivity modules into everything, but with our current power production, it's ELF modules for everyone. Remember that stone patch? Well, it's on life support. I'd really like to set up dedicated factories for processing units in LDS so that they don't end up with the dregs of resources from everywhere else. But I've just about had it with being stuck without logistics networks or nuclear power, so it's time to limp to space. The silo goes right beside the crash site, and I'll make all the scaffolding here. It's going to take a lot of rockets carrying scaffolding to actually get that base to do anything, so while it cooks, I'll set up all the remaining science in this space down here that I definitely left open for it on purpose. I was prescient enough to have cut off a line from the ingredients for chemical science from the main bus, but the routing isn't pretty. The ratios are all wrong, but that's all the science is ready to go for when I start importing space science. This is where the reactor is going to end up, just as soon as I have enough uranium to spare, and I might as well automate the heat exchangers, turbines, and heat pipes. The new fluid mechanics of 2.0 make creating a new reactor a breeze, because you don't have to worry about water or steam throughput whatsoever. Here's the landing pad. This is a decidedly temporary position specifically to deliver space science. Alright, we're running out of plastic. It's not that we're not getting enough crude oil, it's just that I didn't make enough refineries. I seriously underestimated the plastic and steel demands of space rockets. But I don't have enough power generation to really fix it. Knowing this, I start finalizing the reactor design. It has multiple flaws, primarily that these medium poles on the turbines aren't attached to anything, but looking at it soothes my anxiety. Oh good, that's a new thing to worry about. With my steel and plastic in such a pitiful state, I get kinda stun-locked for an hour or two, not really sure what to do next. Do you recognize this base layout? I took a break from the playthrough to make that video on inserter power draw, but if you squint, you'll notice that this base is the background image for its thumbnail. It really helps to take a step back from the game to regain your patience sometimes. When I come back, I decide, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. I'm just going to build for the generator I want and not the generator I have. Be careful when placing pipes by bot. Bots will connect pipes carrying different fluids together, and that can lead to halted production. I accidentally pumped 7,000 units of crude oil into the water pipe before noticing. Here's some night vision. I realized for audience viewing comfort I probably should have prioritized it. At least it's not orange anymore. These additional refineries are definitely going to strain my power grid to the breaking point, so it's time for drastic measures. By the grace of Clang, I finally have a surplus of uranium-235 and can start up the reactors. Just 5 U-235 is enough for 50 fuel cells. With the 4 times neighbor bonus, these 50 cells will provide 1.6 terajoules of energy, enough to power this 75 megawatt base for 6 hours, assuming no wastage. There's always a little bit of wastage involved, but by synchronizing fuel insertion and only inserting fuel when the temperature is below a certain threshold, and there's currently no fuel inside, then we can use almost the entire Buffalo. Now that we have a 500 megawatt reactor set up, I can start mitigating the resource drain of this base with prod modules. They're just prod 1s, but 8% for every step of something like processing units, you start to get about 36% more product for the same raw materials. In 2.0, the upgrade planner can be programmed to set module insertion. I set up a blueprint book for fast retrofits. Prods in anything that it takes, efficiency in anything that it doesn't. I copy and pasted my prod mod build for efficiency and speed modules, so I have enough on hand. I start extending my walls over a stone patch to the north and redesign the platform a bit to make an ore carousel. Then retrofit the smelters from steel to electric furnaces. Playing space exploration a few years ago taught me some valuable lessons. Primarily, you really want to know if your nuclear reactors on other planets are out of fuel. so I set up an alarm that is so loud I can hear it from the edge of the solar system. Asteroid crushers have a chance to spit out their input as an output, which means that you need filtered inserters, and also you need to make sure the carousel doesn't fully saturate. Now that the base is tuned up a little, the actual limiting factor to getting supplies up to space is the crafting speed of this silo. You definitely want to use prod modules for a craft this expensive, and speed beacons are the answer. But I brain farted thinking that beacons were locked behind space science, so here's another silo. Tack on a little extra space to the platform and we've got our first space science. Only took me 20 hours. Don't laugh too hard or you'll miss the punchline. This is assuredly the fastest I've ever personally gathered space science. What shocks me is that while surface-to-orbit delivery takes a rocket, orbit-to-surface delivery is literally free. If you've ever played Kerbal Space Program, you'd know that dropping from orbit usually takes some propellant to decelerate yourself. But I'm not complaining. Now that space science is trickling in, I can take a look at that tech tree and realize I could have been researching production and utility science this whole time. Doing so probably would have strained my resources enough to delay space science though, so I'm not broken up about it. Running the base at full force is making this place pretty stinky, and the biters have stepped up the arms race, so it's time for a little diplomacy. With big spitters in the mix, the tank and the defender capsule combo is a little less than a pure face roll, unfortunately. With logistics networks comes the mall, which is great for automating all the really annoying stuff you don't want to make very often, like oil refineries, reactors, centrifuges, and whatnot. I foolishly put rocket silos in the mall, and this ends up killing my science production for an hour as the mall gets resource priority. Finally. Coverx in 2.0 is pretty much a joke. It used to be an interesting logistical challenge involving careful resource management that I used to do with sushi belts, but I have since learned the error of my ways. Even before you could hook machines up to circuit networks, Vulcanite processing taught me exactly how to deal with this kind of recursive input recipe. It's simple. You just have a filtered inserter with an overridden stack size of 1, only take out U235 when there is more than 40 of it, and have an inserter only insert exactly 3 U238 when the machine has less than 5. Have 3 inserters and 2 chests feed the output back into its input, and you've beaten power generation for Nauvis. Unfortunately, the enriched uranium demand of nukes was more than tripled in Space Age, so we won't be joining the Shadow Wizard money gang anytime soon. Uranium and biters are 2 unique resources of Nauvis, so Coverx and nuclear power are pretty much only useful here. I screw around with making a system that feeds more centrifuges with the output and then sings me a song when all 4 are full, but the beacon research finishes and I decide screw that. These fully beaconed centrifuges can make more enriched uranium than I even know what to do with. The beacons do draw a lot of power though, even when they aren't actually doing anything, so I don't want it running all the time. By isolating the electrical network behind a power switch which only closes when the buffer of U235 has run down, the beacons and centrifuges will all shut off when not needed, saving something like 35 megawatts. The best part is that this setup can support a way larger base than this and will automatically increase its production as needed. I also automated military science. It's kind of bootstrapped though. Oh, and the ore carousel in orbit is locked up. I carefully rejigger it to prevent the grabbers from feeding it to the belt if the levels are too high, and then I remember you can just void items into space. I made this way more complex than it needed to be. Now I'm feeling pretty good. The tech is rolling in. With the exception of cliff explosives, I have all the tools and toys I'm comfortable with using. The biter attacks are ramping up though, so it's time to fortify. The current walls are fine until behemoths show up, but I really don't want them to suddenly start tearing through my walls when I'm on another planet. It's always worth blueprinting your wall design. Don't forget outside and inside corners. With a little bit of dragon's teeth and mines, these defenses are legitimately overkill, but I don't ever want to have to think about biters again unless it's taking the fight to them. And this will do that. I think these condensed playthrough videos really undersell the sheer amount of time and effort spent clearing out these biter nests. They send out expansion teams more often the higher their evolution factor. There's a good reason why most megabasers tend to turn off biters or biter expansion. It's not that it's difficult or costly, it's just tedious. I've always toyed with the concept that maybe expansion should only be triggered by absorbing pollution so that it could actually be meaningfully mitigated by careful play. But instead we get this. Once your expansion timer starts to get low, you need to use artillery to automatically prune their nests. But artillery is locked behind Volcanus. Pasting the wall blueprints knocked out the power to my copper and stone mines, which halts production for a good hour while I'm off dealing with the locals. But once that's sorted out, it's time to start constructing our spaceship. I want the proud Anselmo to keep putting its cardboardium alloy to work making my space science, so the NX-01 will be our prototype transport vessel for Volcanus. The silos get some much needed speed beaconing, and before long, things start to take shape. For your viewing pleasure, this ship has been constructed to be perfectly symmetrical. I'm only going to do this once, so drink it in. This tiny chemical plant can't even produce enough fuel for one thruster to fire continually, but by making a buffer of fuel tanks, we should have enough to get there. Before that, I want some Power Armor Mark II and an unreasonable amount of exoskeletons. My iron mines are starting to peter out, and the raw amounts remaining aren't encouraging, but thankfully Volcanus is the land of plenty, where iron literally spews from the ground unbidden. And now that I'm ready to escape Nauvis, this seems like a good place to end the first part. I had planned to make this playthrough as a single video, but forgot that it takes me a really long time to get anything actually accomplished, because I kinda suck at this game.